let us begin our Srimad Bhagavatam study, which is the medicine for our soul, for our mind. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanaatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavari Pachatma Devatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Ooh, today's interesting section. So what is going to happen now is this. Right after it is explained what Krishna did before he left this world. Stali, would you like to start reading and then I can take over after?
Okay.
Are you able to, or should I?
Yes, sir. I'll read. Share the screen?
Can you see the screen?
No, I can't.
Really?
No, not me. There's only a picture of Krishna.
No?
Yes. Now I'm able to see. Yes. I have to start from 3.24.
Yeah.
Okay. Krishna humbly bowed before Vishwamitra, Asita, Vashishta, Narada, Kanva, Kashyap, Durvasa, and the other sages who had come to his father's house to perform sacrifice for the prosperity of the Yadus. When the rituals were complete and the sages ready to leave, Krishna accompanied them to the city gates along with his ministers and respectfully bade them farewell. On the Lord's suggestion, the sages then went to Pindaraka, a nearby holy place on the coast, where the Lord's numerous sons happened to be spending leisure time. The boys were enjoying themselves on the beach when they saw the sages arrive to take their evening baths in the ocean. In exuberance of youth, they decided to play a prank on the sages. Thus, it was that the next morning, as the sages were completing their morning rituals, the boys approached them. They dressed Samba as a woman.
Oh God. See what all naughty things they are doing.
Doing, placing a cushion under his cloth to make it appear he was pregnant. With his head covered, Samba, acting like a shy maiden, was led by his brothers to where the sages stood. Feigning humility, the boys bowed at the sages' feet and imprudently said, O learned Brahmins, this black-eyed pregnant woman has something to ask you. She is too embarrassed to inquire for herself. She is just about to give birth and very much desires a son. Since all of you are great sages with infallible vision, please tell us whether her child will be a boy or a girl. Immediately aware of the trickery, the sages looked one to the other. This was most surprising. They conferred telepathically, silently discussing how to respond. Sage Kanwa raised an eyebrow. The boys are mocking us, thinking we are ignorant about material affairs of sense gratification. Durasa scowled. This insolent behavior is a deviation from the path of morality established by their father, Lord Krishna. They deserve to be punished. Vishwamitra disagreed. My dear Durvasa, please remain peaceful. The princely descendants of the Yadu and Bhoja dynasty are not ordinary living beings. It is not their nature to be offensive, nor is it right for a self-realized sage to take offense for a slight misdemeanor. You are right, Vishwamitra, said Asita. It is not possible for these boys to act offensively. Yet, without a doubt, they are ridiculing us. I feel there must be a divine plan unfolding. Narada agreed. This must be Krishna's will, especially as he suggested we visit this place. Why would the Lord want his sons to offend us? Asked Kashyapa. In any case, I do not think it wise to become angry with such great personalities. Anger is the appropriate response when Krishna's devotees are offended, argued Durvasa. Yes, said Narada. This is the lesson Krishna wants to teach through his sons. No one, no matter how great or powerful, can avoid the reactions of offending devotees. Besides which, by cursing the boys, we can also assist the Lord in winding up his earthly pastimes. This is what my heart tells me. The sages all concurred. Their consultation had happened within moments. Inspired by the Supersoul, they spoke as one. Fools, she will bear you an iron club that will destroy your entire dynasty. The terrified boys quickly lifted Samba's sari, as to their horror, an iron club fell out. They immediately took it to Dwarka. Filled with remorse, they anxiously recounted all that had happened to King Ugrasen. The king turned pale. Hoping to avert the curse's terrible effects, he ordered, grind the club to powder and throw it far out to sea. After grinding the club, one small iron lump remained. That too was thrown into the water along the iron powder and was swallowed by a fish. This fish was later caught by the hunter Jara, who used to iron lump who used the iron lump in its belly to make an arrowhead. A few months passed. Inspired by Krishna, those Yadu princes who were incarnations of the gods went to Prabhasa to perform a sacrifice. The others, who were eternal associates of the Lord from the spiritual world, remained in Dwarka. On arriving at Prabhasa, the princess bathed in the ocean, standing chest high in the gently lapping water. They offered prayers to the forefathers, gods, and great sages. Afterwards, they distributed countless cows to the local Brahmins in charity, along with gold, bedding, clothing, animal skin seeds, blankets, horses, elephants, brides, and sufficient land for maintenance. After offering the Brahmins delicious foodstuffs which had been first offered to Vishnu, they respectfully bowed down before them, touching their foreheads to the ground. When all the Brahmins were fully satisfied, the Yadu princes, taking their permission, sat down to eat. With their meal, they drank rice liquor. Becoming intoxicated, Satyaki remembered his grudge against Kritvarma for helping Ashwathama to kill the sleeping Pandava troops. In a loud, mocking voice, he berated him. What warrior with any prowess would kill sleeping Kritwama, who was also intoxicated, in turn angrily insulted Satyaki for having killed the wounded and unarmed Bhrishrava in the Kurukshetra war. Satyaki pulled out his sword, rushed at Kritvarma, and severed his head. Kritvarma's friends seized their weapons and set on Satyaki. Other heroes came to Satyaki's defense, and soon all the princes were grasping their weapons and mounting their animals or chariots to fight with one another. The iron dust, which was previously thrown into the ocean, had since washed ashore on the Prabhasa beach. Those particles had somehow grown into tall, stout canes. As the sun began to set, their arrows and spears spent, the angry Yadu heroes pulled out those canes which were like iron rods. By the Lord's will, and because of the Brahmin's curse, those inebriated warriors furiously attacked each other until they were all slain.
Oh God.
Krishna,
Pause here.
yes.
Yeah, see, one small thing can lead to such a big thing. So, yes, it's Krishna's will. At the same time, we need to be conscious. That's why it's called Krishna consciousness. Every action, we should be conscious of, is this pleasing to Krishna? Am I doing the right thing? And so on. So, this is like so sad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Krishna's departure. Uddhava describes how he met Krishna just before the Lord's departure and how Krishna instructed both him and sage Maitreya. As Uddhava ended his description of the Yadu's demise, Vidura buried his face in his hands. His body shook with sorrow. Gradually he composed himself and said, how could this happen? All these great heroes were Krishna's family members. They were his servants, sons, and grandsons. How could they be slain in Krishna's presence? Uddhava said, my dear friend, know this to be a display of Krishna's potency. By his will, the spiritual energy arranged this spectacular drama so that common people would think the Yadus had died at each other's hands. Krishna, however, knew the truth. His family members were either his own incarnations or gods from the heavenly planets. Before dispatching them to their respective abodes, the Lord arranged them for them to go to the holy places of Prabhasa. There they performed religious rituals and ate and drank to their heart's content before returning to their various planets. What about Balrama and Krishna? Asked Vidura. Did they also depart? Uddhava replied, after the dramatic departure of Yadus, Balrama sat on the shore of the ocean and, meditating on Krishna, returned to his eternal spiritual abode. Then Krishna went to the bank of the river Saraswati, sipped water, and sat silently beneath a fig tree. Uddhava fell silent, as if stunned. A few moments passed. Then, in a wistful voice, he continued, the Lord always removes his devotees' unhappiness. Knowing that his disappearance would distress me, he previously instructed me not to go with his family to Prabhasa. He told me to go instead to Patrika Ashram. He knew that by hearing and chanting about him in the association of Nara and Narayana, my painful feelings of separation from him would be assuaged. Vidura asked, why did you know why he had planned the trip to Prabhasa? Uddhava looked down dolefully for a few moments. Then he softly replied, yes, I knew his intention, but I could not bear the thought of separation from him. Therefore, after the other Yadus had left Dwarka, instead of going to Badrika Ashram, I followed him. When I arrived, I saw my lord, the shelter of the goddess of fortune, sitting with the sage Maitreya on the bank of the river Saraswati. Uddhava began to perspire, and his body trembled. And visioning Krishna, he closed his eyes, his voice assuming a deep ethereal tone. Krishna's blackish body is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and extremely beautiful. His eyes are peaceful and reddish like the rising morning sun. I could immediately recognize him, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his yellow silk garments and his four arms. He was decorated with the symbols of the Godhead. The auspicious Shrivatsakal of hair decorated his chest. I'll just have water.
I can continue. The auspicious Srivatsa curl of hair decorated his chest. Famous Kaustubha jewel hung from his neck. His body was draped with flower garlands. And the embodied forms of his personal weapons hovered around him. Vidura leaned forward, eager to hear Uddhava's account of his meeting with Krishna. I love this expression here. Embodied forms of his personal weapons hovered around him. That is such an amazing meditation. See, like Sudarshan Chakra and Shankha, like hovering like that. It's not like the Lord has to keep holding it like we hold umbrellas or something. No, these are personal deities. They are not just some ordinary weapons. Maitreya made his way toward the river Saraswati. He had been traveling for many days, and he desired to take bath and refresh himself. As he came out of the woods near the river, he suddenly saw Krishna seated beneath a young fig tree, his right foot resting on his left thigh. Completely forgetting his fatigue and thirst, the sage sat nearby, his eyes fixed upon Krishna. Shortly thereafter, Uddhava arrived at the scene. He too was tired from his long trek and was anxious to find Krishna. Smiling at him, Krishna beckoned him to sit beside him. Uddhava felt a surge of love in his heart. He hurried over and fell at Krishna's feet. After welcoming him, Krishna said, Uddhava, in a previous life, you were one of the 8 celestial Vasus. Along with the other administrative gods, you performed a sacrifice, praying to become my associate. As the super soul, I understood your desire, which is difficult to achieve. Brahmins who perform sacrifice for worldly gain and ascetics who strive for liberation cannot appreciate that my personal association is the greatest benediction. Now I will give to you what is rarely achieved by others. Maitreya, who was seeking liberation, listened attentively as Krishna spoke. He became conscious that it is better to become Lord's personal associate. Krishna continued, Dear Uddhava, this will be your last birth in this material world, for in this life you have attained my complete mercy. Since the unwavering devotion you have sought me out in this lonely place, I will narrate to you the Srimad Bhagavatam, which I previously spoke to Brahma in the Padma Kalpa at the beginning of creation. By hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, which describes my transcendental glories, you will enter my eternal Vaikuntha planets after leaving this body and live with me forever. On hearing Krishna's affectionate words, Uddhava felt transcendental ecstasy. His voice choked up, his bodily hairs stood erect, and tears flowed from his eyes. Clasping his hands together, he falteringly replied, By worshipping you, a person can achieve whatever he wants, even worldly happiness or liberation. But I am so happy serving you that I no longer desire anything else. Uddhava told the Lord that he felt the greatest transcendental bliss when hearing about, discussing, and remembering Krishna's pastimes. However, he feared that after Krishna's departure, the non-devotees would cast aspersions on the Lord. They would dissuade innocent people from path of bhakti by pointing to contradictions between the Vedic teachings and Krishna's pastimes. Hearing such foolishness would greatly distress Uddhava. He asked Krishna to personally explain these contradictions. My Lord, the Vedas say that the Supreme has nothing to do. I know that even in the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material cosmos, you do not personally act, but your will is affected by your energies. So how is it you personally acted in so many ways during your earthly pastimes? For example, you killed numerous demons in Vrindavan, you lifted Govardhan hill, and you drove Arjuna's chariot. Uddhava expressed one doubt after another. You told Arjuna that you are unborn, and yet it appears that you took birth as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. How is this to be understood? You control invincible time, feared by all. Yet, as if afraid, you fled from the battle with Jarasandha and took shelter of the sea fortress. You're self-satisfied, and yet you enjoy married life with many women. All of this is bewildering. Remembering the times Krishna asked him for advice, Uddhava almost broke down. Almighty Lord, it is bewildering how you, whose knowledge is always perfect and complete, should consult with me on matters of policy as if unsure what to do. Maitreya listened intently, for he too had these doubts. Folding his palms, Uddhava petitioned Krishna, My Lord, if you think I'm competent to understand, kindly reveal to me the transcendental truths about yourself that you previously taught Lord Brahma. By understanding these, I will be able to cross the ocean of suffering arising from your disappearance. Let's pause here. I think this point here is relevant.
Yes.
Uddhava is like
Such valid question he's asking, Everybody would be having these doubts.
True.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very.
Very.
Also, look at the mood in which he's asking, right? He's very humble. He's not saying, come on, answer all these things, such a contradiction. No, he's saying, I think I'm competent to understand, which is very important for us also. Sometimes we may have doubts. But we must also look into, are we really qualified? Are we really competent to understand this kind of things or not? So it's very humbling. Actually, it's very humbling to see this attitude of Uddhava. And that's why he was so dear to Krishna. It's the attitude. It's not our skill. It's not our knowledge. It's not how philosophical we are. Sometimes certain things, why Krishna did this, we don't know. So it's Krishna's will is very difficult to understand.
But since he was being liberated, maybe he's asking these questions for us.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
knew everything, you know.
absolutely. But still, look at the mood with which he's asking.
Yeah.
The mood is very humble.
Very
He's not saying, I don't have any doubts. I can understand. Maybe you please explain in a way other people can understand. Right? I mean, there's usually that false ego. We think, but he's very, very humble. I really like this. That, like sometimes I look into charts of people and then I see that they don't have confidence. They don't know what to do in life. A lot of people have these questions. What should I do with my life? What should I do in my life? How should I engage myself? Like that, a lot of people have these doubts. And some people are very unsure about themselves. And yesterday also I had a client who was so disturbed that, they were really not sure what to do with their life, what to do with their career, etc., etc. And they were feeling so bad, and oh, I feel so bad. I'm so uncertain, and I have these doubts, and I'm this and that. And I said, no, it's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing to be. Krishna is humbling us. Okay, you don't know how to do. You're very uncertain. You're very disorganized. You're not very consistent in your things. It's not a bad thing. It just puts us in a humble position. And who says that it's not good to be in a humble position? Spiritual life is all about taking that humble position. So it's not a bad thing at all. It's not a bad thing at all. Would you like to continue, Rastastai?
Yeah. The Lord's lotus-like eyes radiated love as he replied to Uddhava. He described confidential knowledge about himself that he had not even told Brahma. After answering Uddhava's questions, Krishna told him to go to Badrika ashram in the Himalayas. Uddhava folded his palms in assent. The best way to stay in Krishna's association was to follow his instructions, which were not different from him. Uddhava respectfully walked around Krishna 3 times and with a grief-laden heart left. Maitreya remained to make further inquiries to the Lord about the nature of his appearance and activities. Walking away, Uddhava turned back to see the Lord, deeply absorbed in discussion with Maitreya. Tears streamed from Vidura's eyes. His heart was breaking after hearing about the disappearance of all his friends, relatives, and of Krishna himself. He strove to pacify his mind with transcendental knowledge, that which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. The material body, however, is sure to come to an end. For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. For several moments, both Uddhava and Vidura sat in silence, each absorbed in their own thoughts. Then, with a deep sigh, Uddhava said, "Thus I am on my way to Padrika ashram, where the Lord resides in his form as Narayana, along with the venerable sage Nara. For thousands of years they have performed penance for the welfare of all beings." As Uddhava rose to depart, Vidura placed a restraining hand on his arm. Despite being Uddhava's elder, Vidura addressed him respectfully, considering him more advanced in devotion to Krishna. O Uddhava, the Lord's servants benefit the world by traveling and enlightening others in transcendental knowledge. Kindly therefore show mercy on me and impact me to me the teachings Krishna gave to you. Uddhava hesitated. He knew that Maitreya, who was his elder, was nearby and equally competent to instruct Vidura. He feared committing the offense known as Maryada Vyatika Karma, impertinently surpassing a superior person. This serious transgression shortened the offender's life and destroyed his opulence, fame, and piety. With folded palms, he replied, O fortunate one, it is better that you take lessons from the learned sage Maitreya. He is nearby and is highly esteemed for his transcendental knowledge. Just before he departed, Krishna also instructed him in order that he might relay those teachings to you. Parikshit listened spellbound, oblivious to hunger and thirst. Shukadeva continued, Uddhava has been greatly afflicted due to separation from Krishna. After spending the night talking about him with Vidura, he could again perceive his Lord's presence everywhere. As the sun rose, Uddhava left for Badrika ashram. Parikshit appeared confused. How is it that the Brahmin's curse destroyed all the Yadus, including, it seems, even Krishna and Balram, yet Uddhava was unharmed? Shukadeva replied, You should understand that the Brahmin's curse was only a superficial reason for Krishna's disappearance along with his family. The real reason was the Lord's desire. He wanted to end his earthly pastimes after first dispatching his associates back to their respective abodes, but he desired that Uddhava remain behind. Shukadeva emphasized that the Lord's body is spiritual and never dies. This gave rise to a further doubt for Parikshit. He had heard that Krishna had left a material body. Since his form is spiritual, how did he leave a corpse? Hmm.
Yeah, so many relevant questions, right? These things come to our minds too. And the answers are there in Srimad Bhagavatam. So that is the beauty of Srimad Bhagavatam. We can stop here for today and we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you so much, Rasastali, for joining me in studying Srimad Bhagavatam.
Thank you so much.